So we'll have Dmitry Bivol versus Artur Beterbiev this weekend in the Pain Gamer out in Saudi again, and I can't wait. We're going to take a look at the undercard. We're going to start with Eubank Jr. versus Szeremeta, which I personally think could be a bit of a risky fight for Eubanks.
Yeah.
I think, he's had a bit of time out. And I do question his motivation for boxing right now because, I don't know why he's not being active. He's had all the opportunities in the world. He's got such a big name, and I don't think he's really maximised it. But I think this could be a bit of a dangerous fight. And I know you've seen a little bit more of Szeremeta, so what's your thoughts on this fight?
I think it's a funny one, isn't it? Because we're all reading the narrative, around this fight, which is this fight brings Eubank Jr. back, gets him back into the mix, gets him to the forefront of the boxing public's mind all of a sudden, and then progresses him and moves him on to bigger fights. But here's the funny thing, right? I don't think that people are realising, and maybe this is more of a discussion as to the legacy of Chris Eubank Jr. and his resume, which is something that is dropping off of the Pain Game. I think today it's a video that we've covered with Brian and KG. And the thing that I feel people are ignoring is the fact that if Szeremeta turns up for it, which, let's be honest, why would you not be? Riyadh season, winner stays on, is what we like to say in this format. Yeah. There's so many guys that have forged almost a new career for himself under the promotion of the Saudis, right? So Szeremeta should have the bit between his teeth. He should turn up looking to win. Now, if he does turn up looking to win, and if he's motivated, and Chris Eubank Jr. manages to beat him and beat him well, I would say that's going to have to go top 3 opponents beaten on Eubank's resume.
Yeah.
Not top 3 opponents, because you'd obviously definitely say that George Groves was a level above Szeremeta, and Billy Joe Saunders at the time was a level above. But actually, if you look at the win column on Eubank Jr.'s resume, Liam Smith, Spike O'Sullivan. I'm trying to think of the best wins here. Like, who are James? I'm not having James DeGale, because I'm a massive James DeGale fan, and I'm just not having it. Like, I am not having James DeGale in the same way that, you might look at and I'm not taking credit away from Tony Bellew. You might look at the second David Haye fight and say, well, that wasn't the David Haye that we know. So what I'm trying to say here, and listen, the Chudanov win was one that was pretty impressive. Really, the depth's not there. And actually, we've seen, I don't know if you remember, right, it's down as a win on his resume, but do you remember the Korobov fight with Eubank Jr.? I think Korobov got injured after about 2 rounds, something like that. Those first 2 rounds didn't look like they were starting well for Eubank Jr.
Yeah.
So there's always the question marks here. And if it's the Eubank Jr. that turned up under the stewardship of Bomac and completely boxed Liam Smith's head off in the rematch, then I would go, well, it should be a foregone conclusion. But the problem is, when have we ever been able to have security around knowing what version of Eubank Jr. is going to turn up?
This is the thing, because, the last fight against Liam Smith, if you look at his performance, it looked great. We thought, oh, this is the version that we've been looking for. But was that just a perfect fight to make him look good because Liam had his injuries and had stuff going on? And I think I'm just not too sure if that gives us all a false sense of where he was at, because I don't think Liam was at his best, because Liam on his day is going to give a much better account of himself than that performance.
And I think there was a rematch clause in the contract there, wasn't it? So it's not like the Josh Kelly one that Liam Smith's just pulled out of, where it's like, look, we're just offering you a fight.
Yeah.
With that, like, you're obligated to take the fight.
Of course.
So there's always that thing in your mind of what percentage of Liam Smith was in the ring that night.
He was at 50% for me. Like, I've watched him, I've followed his career, and he was a shadow of his former self. So I don't really look at that fight and go, oh, Eubanks looked great. Yes, he performed well, but what he had in front of him, wasn't much, just putting it basic.
So what I would say with Szeremeta, from what I've seen of him, and listen, I haven't watched every single one of his fights. I've probably watched 4 or 5 of his fights. From what I've seen of him, stylistically, he's a dream for Eubank Jr. in terms of he likes to fight in close. He tucks those elbows in, and when a fighter tucks their elbows in like that, what it means is a combination puncher, and someone that loves to do it like Eubank Jr. is going to have a field day, because you're going to be able to go up from the body, up to the head, and you're going to be able to work. But at the same time as that, I think that he's tougher than we felt he was after the Golovkin fight. With the Golovkin fight, he was getting put down with a jab, yeah? Now listen, I'm sure Golovkin's jab will put me to bed. So I'm no shade thrown here.
Not at
but
all.
he was getting put over with the jab, cuffing shots around the back of the head, things like that. And you sort of thought, okay, we're sort of more looking at Golovkin. We don't really know Szeremeta at that point, right?
No.
And we're sort of more looking at Golovkin and thinking, well, with a tougher test, we'll find out where a 34-year-old Golovkin is or whatever he was at that time. But actually, the Munguia fight, despite it not going Szeremeta's way in the end, and eventually I think being stopped, he showed a lot more toughness. And what he has shown is he's shown the ability to fight fire with fire. Now, at times, again, that might go against you with Eubank Jr, as it did with Avni Yildirim and other fighters and whatnot. But at the same time, if Eubank Jr is not on his game and you've got a tough, rugged fighter in front of you that won't budge. And also the other thing is I thought he had quite a good jab as well, Szeremeta. And I don't think that Eubank's ever been a fighter who would favour to stand and jab it out rather than bang it out. So I think that ultimately this fight is going to tell us so much about Eubank Jr. Regardless of how he comes through it. If he does come through it, he'll land a big fight after this. Will that be Canelo? Will that be Hamza Shiraz? I don't know, but regardless of how he comes through, he'll land a big fight. For the boxing public, for us hardcore boxing fans who want to see Eubank Jr, but we want to see the sort of best version of him, we're obviously hoping he comes through looking explosive, because I don't think the interest is there for a Canelo fight as much as Eubank's got the name, so it will always be able to be made. I don't think it's there unless he looks explosive in this one.
Not at all. I mean, the fights that people want to see, just to touch on the fact of this show, I think he's kind of stole this whole show for me. I think his personality, and I kind of had said on the live stream against Travis about this personality not having charisma. I don't know where I was in that moment. I was so tunnel visioned with AJ. But anyway, it's true. He's so charismatic, and he's literally stole the show. And we've talked about this in the sense of Beterbiev and Dmitry. They're not the most charismatic, so it's not hard to kind of steal the show. But we have got also Ben Whittaker, which we're going to talk about next. But even still, I think he really has stole the show. Even coming out in the public workout in the full traditional Saudi way, I just think the way he talks and the way he captures the audience, I think because of that family name, he's always going to be involved in big fights. It doesn't matter how he performs, there'll always be options out there for him, because he's just pulls the crowds in. I don't care whether you love him or hate him, you want to see him fight. He's one of them guys. But I think this fight is a big test to see exactly where he's at, because there is them fights like Ben next potentially in the future, which we'd all love to see. But like I say, I am a little bit worried. Like I say, you've seen a little bit more of Szeremeta than I have, but I think this could be a bit of a risky fight for him, because like you've touched on, if you're not going to turn up for a fight in Saudi when you're getting well paid and you know the opportunities that could come from that, you're never going to be up for it. You know what I mean? So,
and this is what I think could go in Eubank Jr.'s favour, because he's been notorious in falling out with managers, promoters, agents, and whatnot over his time, and he's now on the last promoter. In terms of
he's been all
with
these
Eddie,
bridges, hasn't
he's
he?
been with Frank, he's been with the Sauerlands. Unless you're going to drop down and fight on small hall shows, or you're going to go with Top Rank or PBC or whatever, like, this is the last promoter, right, in Ben Shalom. But the landscape's completely different, because ultimately, I shouldn't say it, but in my opinion, none of these guys are the promoters anymore. Turki Al-Sheikh is the promoter. These guys just have the stable of fighters to provide Turki Al-Sheikh with the fighters to put on the events. Yeah. So at this point now, of course, Ben Shalom is Eubank Jr.'s promoter, but who is guiding Eubank Jr.'s career for the rest of his career? Well, if he performs well and they want him back, then it's Riyadh season, and it's Turki Al-Sheikh and it is the Saudis that are guiding Eubank Jr.'s career. So maybe he might see this as almost a perfect last chance saloon in his career.
I think so, and I think, one thing he's always looked after himself. He always trains hard. So I am hoping he turns up and performs, because there's so many great fights out there for him. And like I say, as you just mentioned, it's Turki Al-Sheikh. He's the guy he needs to impress, really. So for Chris Eubanks versus Szeremeta, what's your prediction? Final prediction?
I'm gonna say Eubank Jr. Again, just so much rides on what version of Kamil Szeremeta comes in here. What I would say is, in the time since Eubank Jr.'s last had a fight, I think Szeremeta's had about 3 fights or something like that. And if you look at the records of the opponents that he's been boxing, kind of mixed records of these opponents, and they're the sort of ones you see when someone's trying to build a run of form together.
Yeah.
Why are you trying to build it? Are you trying to build that run of form together because you want another payday or because you want another shot at the big time? If it's the latter and Szeremeta turns up, I'm going to pick Eubank Jr on points.
Yeah, really interesting. I'm not massively confident because, like I say, I haven't seen loads of Szeremeta, but from what I've seen of him, I would expect Chris Eubank Jr to win if he turns up and performs like we know he can. But there is a small part of me thinking this could be a bit of a banana skin, and I would be devastated if he was to lose because there's so many fights if he wins Eubanks that I would love to see him in. But I am going to go with Chris Eubanks. Yeah. Let's move on. Let's talk about Ben Whittaker versus Liam Cameron.
Yes.
Some two people that I'm very familiar with because my last England call-up, I was with Ben Whittaker and we boxed over in Holland, and also Liam Cameron. Again, we've touched this on the Pain Game, a video that Brian's going to be also dropping. But Liam Cameron was one of them standout names when I was coming through the amateur ranks. So he's a great fighter. I just think he's fell off the wagon as such throughout his career, but he's come back now.
These lot won't know that, by the way. So tell them about Liam Cameron. So I knew Liam Cameron through having a gym mate that boxed him, and it was actually the fight before he got the last fight that he got the suspension after, which was a drugs ban. It wasn't for performance enhancers. It was for recreational drugs. You can look into it on the internet yourself. But to that point, he still had a mixed record, right? He had taken losses. But you told me, because I didn't know about the amateur pedigree. Yeah,
so as an amateur, like I say, he boxed for England, top amateur. I'm pretty sure he was an ABA champion. But yeah, I can just remember because I started boxing late. I come in at the age of 19, and I just remember when I come on the scene, I kept on hearing his name, and he was a great operator. And yeah, like I say, he boxed for England, and then he kind of disappeared for a little while, and then he turned pro, and I didn't really follow his career at this point. But when he did, like recent years, when he's coming back into the boxing, he fought Lyndon Arthur, another great fighter. It was a very close fight. I think a lot of people thought it could have went either way. So it's just a case of, being at the right place, the right time, and grabbing that opportunity. And that's what he's done. And now he's here on a Saudi card. But I think he seems to be back in the right place now. He seems mentally in a good place. And he's absolutely grabbing these opportunities with both hands. So, again, with Ben Whittaker, he's at a stage in his career, he does all the showboating. Again, people love or hate it. Me personally, I love it because I think boxing's about entertainment, and he definitely represents that. And but at the same time, people question, has he got that punch power that you need, as you go up through the levels? But again, because he's I think he's just been enjoying himself. He hasn't been setting his feet really, digging them in. He's just been playing, talking to the crowd. Like I say, maybe showboating a little bit too much at times. And I think it's coming to a stage now, he needs to really start to try to get guys out of there because he's at that stage where the level's really starting to increase. And like I say, he needs to be impressing people. He needs to impress Turkey Al-Sheikh to make sure that he gets more opportunities. And I think this could be a perfect test to see exactly where he is because Liam Cameron is no pushover. He's well schooled. He's a good fighter. So, I think Liam's only going to get better because, like I say, he has had a bit of time out. He's had his problems. But, he's now boxing regular again. And from what I remember, I can't remember what weight he was boxing at when I first come on. Because
light middle.
Was he light middle?
As a pro, he was a light middle before the ban.
Before the ban, okay.
Now he's
up at light heavyweight now. Yeah. So, I can remember as an amateur being a bit of a puncher. He could definitely bang a little bit. But he's come up through the weight. So, I just think his performances now, even after fighting Lyndon Arthur, when you've been out the game for a while and then all of a sudden you do a 10-rounder, you're doubting yourself a little bit. How am I going to be in the 8th, the 9th, the 10th round? But he's done that now, so you should see even more confident performance.
Take that confidence coming off the back of feeling like he beat Lyndon Arthur.
Exactly.
Which I know he does because I watched face-off with him and Whittaker earlier on.
Yeah.
And Whittaker says about the loss to Arthur, and he said, did I lose though? Did I lose? Say, if he feels like he's beat Lyndon Arthur and he's looking at Lyndon Arthur, I'm thinking, okay, you've got a win over Yard, a loss to Yard. You've also been in there for the distance with Bivol, who's a pound-for-pound guy. So Liam Cameron will definitely be looking at this and thinking, this is the perfect opportunity for me because Liam Cameron could beat someone with better pedigree than Ben Whittaker and get literally a drop in the ocean when it comes to the credit and the publicity off the back of that win in comparison to what he would get over Ben Whittaker. So
you're right because Ben Whittaker, because he's got this showboating style and there is a lot of, split not everyone loves him. I'd go as far to say a lot of people want to see him get knocked out. I think that's the truth of the matter. And I think, I think he's a star and I think he could go all the way. But if Liam Cameron, like you say, was to beat Ben Whittaker because there's been so much hype surrounding him, I think that would absolutely make his career skyrocket if he was to beat Ben Whittaker. So
with the time that you spent on the GB squad around Ben Whittaker, have you seen him in as in high level spars and high level fights? And if so, does he do the same thing? Because we're only going on what we've seen in the pro ranks, really.
Yeah, to be honest, I haven't seen much of him then because that was towards the end of my GB career and this was an England call-up. So I didn't even see him on the night when we boxed because I was fighting. I think I was warming up when he was fighting. So I've not actually seen a load of him. But I know a lot of guys that he was on the squad with and they all rate him very highly. And I have seen the odd clip of sparring when he was on GB against other good opposition.
He's sparring Felix Cash.
Loads of the guys, and he's doing all that showboating. So, and I seen him in the Olympics. You don't get an Olympic silver medal without being world class, if you know what I'm saying. And he was, when I was on GB, it's not often at that level you see guys showboating because you can't simply get away with it at the highest level. But he did, so that shows how good he is. But the difference is in the amateurs, you've only got 3 rounds. You can kind of dance and move around the ring. You can get by in 3 rounds, but when it goes into the longer distance, it's very hard to be up on your toes dancing around the ring over the longer distance because, them tougher, strong guys start to catch up with you. And naturally, your pace is going to slow down. So this is the interesting thing with Ben Whittaker. I think everybody wants to see what he's like over the longer distance when he's got guys in there who are really coming to win. Because let's be honest, a lot of the guys that he's fought up to this point, they haven't really wanted to win. I mean, that last guy that he fought at the night, it was an African guy he fought. I can't think of his name.
Yeah.
Although
he was 12-0.
He was 12-0, but who had he fought? And it's that thing of, there's a difference of giving all the talk because he's trying to get himself that opportunity, which it worked. He got the fight, but when he was in there, he was well outclassed and he couldn't really put a dent in Ben Whittaker.
This guy, Liam Cameron, is easily going to be Ben Whittaker's toughest test in
without doubt
so far. Because when you look at Liam Cameron, for example, right, there's no question of, if he turns up on the night. We were talking about Camille Szeremeta and we were saying, well, listen, if he turns up motivated, Liam Cameron's not going to not turn up motivated. He served a 4-year ban. He probably thought his boxing career was over. And now, not only has he had another crack at the whip, he is in the big time, Riyadh season card. Liam Cameron understands that the guys that set up the Riyadh season cards, they love entertainment. So if you lose and you're entertaining, they'll still have you back.
Exactly.
Look at Jarrell Big Baby Miller. He took a loss to Daniel Dubois, comes back and in my opinion beats Andy Ruiz Jr., although the decision didn't go for him. So what I'm saying is Liam Cameron, win, lose or draw, has a huge opportunity here. So there's not going to be a question of motivation, a question of stage fright even. Liam Cameron will turn up and by the 12th round, or I think it's probably a 10 rounder or something, but by the final bell, or if it finishes early, we are going to have so many answers to our questions around where's Ben Whittaker at this moment in time right now. And he spoke about not the lack of punch power, but the lack of stoppages on his record, right? Well, you got to remember, when guys are in survival mode, as you know,
it's very hard to get them out.
Very hard to get them out. Yeah. So now, if he goes on a run through domestic level fighters, let's say, for example, if he gets a win over Liam Cameron, listen, we were speaking, I would love to see Whittaker against Willie Hutchinson. I think the build-up would be electric. I think it'd be a decent fight there. I think it'd be a huge step up for him. But the sensible one would maybe be if he gets a win over Liam Cameron, then maybe you'd move on to Lyndon Arthur. He's boxed on Riyadh season cards before, so they've dealt with him. That could be another one. And then maybe you move on to someone like that. But much like James DeGale and former Olympian there and George Groves, you sort of saw these guys actually start to get more stoppages on their record as they came to box guys who came to fight. So now if he goes on a little run through the domestic scene, that's when we'll really find out because these guys won't be in survival mode anymore. And I don't think Liam Cameron will be tomorrow night.
No, he's definitely going to grasp this opportunity with both hands. And I'm really excited for it. If I have to push you for who you think would win, who you picking?
I've got to go with Ben Whittaker. I've got to go with him, but I just want to put it on record that I think this is a real test for him.
Yeah, I think I'm the same, but it wouldn't surprise me if Liam Cameron, pushed him all the way. And I don't want to say it's a really difficult one. I've went back and forth, but I'm going Ben Whittaker. But it wouldn't shock me if Liam Cameron was to shock everybody and get the win. But yeah, okay. Moving on Fraser Clarke versus Wardley.
Yeah.
This is a fight that I'm really looking forward to because the first one, I know there's been a lot of controversy with the fact that we've got a British title here in Saudi because, you know, everyone wants to see a British title fight in the, you know, the UK. But, you know, the fighters have got to go where the money is. It's that simple because...
I'd argue this is above British level, to be honest, though, either way, do you know what I mean? It's British and Commonwealth, I think, on the line.
Yeah.
I'd argue it's above that level. You say you're looking forward to it. Are you looking forward to it? Because I know when my pals are boxing, I hate it. Like, I don't like watching my friends. Yeah, so you're obviously good friends of Fraser Clarke. How is it for you?
Yes, because Fraser Clarke, for anyone who doesn't know, me and Fraser Clarke, when I first got in the GB on development squad way back, I shared a room with him. He was one of my best pals on there, and so we'll go way back. We're going into the full-time squad together. So many good stories, not for the camera, but
many can be told on it.
Many good stories, but absolutely great guy. So there'll be a massive part of me watching it, very, very nervous, as you do when you're watching your mate. But at the same time, you know, I'm backing him. By the way, I'm just going to put that out there straight away. I am backing Fraser Clarke. I do believe he's just because of the amateur pedigree. I think he's the more school fighter. I just do see him winning, but I think he's going to learn more from the last fight. But yeah, with no doubt, is this going to be an easy fight because Wardley can really bang. But yeah, like to answer the question, am I going to be nervous? I'm going to be extremely nervous. But like I say, I think I have got a lot of confidence going off that first fight because although, you know, Fraser Clarke's the more school as an amateur, as a professional, Wardley's actually more experienced. And that was really Fraser Clarke's first fight as a professional with a guy who really come to win. You know, there's a lot of questions in his mind whether he can do the distance, you know, the full 10 rounds. And he showed both guys showed tremendous amount of heart. I think, to be honest, I think both guys had never been in a fight at this stage in their professional career at that pace. I mean, both guys give it their all. I think that's credit to, you know, British title fights. I think it brings out the best in fighters. It was a classic British title fight.
That was the best heavyweight British title fight I've seen since AJ against White.
It was like a throwback fight. You know, the old guys back in the day used to stand, you know, for 10, 12 rounds, you know, going at it. You don't really see that now with the heavyweights. It's a lot more, you know, boxing and picking your moments, and because naturally at heavyweight the power's there. You don't want to just take too many risks because you'll end up flat on your back. But back in the day, the old guys, they had tremendous chins and engines. But that was like a throwback fight, and I absolutely loved it.
Who can make more adjustments? Because the easy option for me is to always go Fraser Clarke. He's the more schooled. He's boxed these guys from Uzbekistan and all these different places around in the Olympics and whatnot who are notoriously tough amateurs to box. Most of them don't even come out of the amateur cycle. Most of them are just happy enough doing that, stay in there and retire without even turning professional and whatnot. And that means they're so well schooled that when you come in there against someone who has not had amateur fights, I think he had 3 white collar bouts, Fabio Wardley.
Yeah.
So massively unorthodox in comparison to the style of fighters and the sort of way that these fighters approach fights that Fraser Clarke's been boxing. And you would say, right, okay, you were a little bit thrown off, and because you've got that amateur pedigree, you're able to then make the adjustments you need to make and deal with the man in front of you. So that would be the first place my mind goes to. But we need to speak about what that first fight would have done for Fabio Wardley, because like you just touched on there, he now knows he can do the rounds and go the distance. He knows he can drop Fraser Clarke, right? And actually, if you look at the more damaging punches in that fight, I think you'd say they were done by Fabio Wardley. Now, I thought a draw was a fair result, by the way. Yeah. I thought it was fair. Like, if I was gonna lean towards anyone, maybe I would just edge towards Fraser Clarke, but I thought a draw was a fair result in that one. Who do you think can make the more adjustments going into?
Do you know what it is? It's one of those, every time I have the conversation, I can pick out so many different points for each guy, because naturally, my first train of thought was the fact that Fraser Clarke is the guy who's less experienced as a pro. So I thought with his amateur background in having more of a technical fighter, you know, I think he would go back with more confidence, thinking I can now do the rounds. You know, he's still, although boxing's boxing, you know, at the end of the day it's throwing punches, but there is a difference from the amateurs to the pros. So my first thought was, you know, Fraser's going to take a lot of confidence from that fight, because realistically as a pro, Fabio Wardley's more experienced, and I do think he's just got a style where he does what he does. He's got a lot of natural attributes. He's very athletic, very powerful. He's a good mover. But putting it basic, he likes to stand and fight. He likes to let his hands go. He likes to take risks. He doesn't mind having a trade-off. Like, it's what he does. And I think when this fight, you know, when it gets right, when both guys find the range again, I think he'll just go for it. I don't think there'll be too much thinking about it. I think Fraser Clarke's approach will be a lot more about thinking and tactical, whereas I think Wardley, I think he's just going to go for the kill. So I think it's not a case of who can, you know, make more adjustments. It's more about the mentality, because I just think Fabio Wardley's he's a fighter through and through, and that's what I love about him. He's exciting to watch. He's fan friendly, whereas I think, like you've just said, it was Fraser Clarke that maybe, you know, took a few more heavier shots. He obviously hit the canvas. So you could argue that he'll have a few more questions in his mind, although he's got a lot of confidence. You can take a lot of confidence away from it. But I think his approach will be a lot more tactical, and I think he'll be drawn upon all his experience as an amateur to really make them adjustments going into this fight. So that's what I think it's down. I think they can both make adjustments and both take a lot from the previous fight. I just think it's Fraser Clarke who's going to be a lot more intelligent about it. I just think that's the way he boxes, because, you know, I've seen him fight. I've seen him as an amateur. He's had so many amateur fights. Every fight that we used to have in the amateurs, you go back, you analyse the fight. It's all about making adjustments, because as an amateur, you've got to be able to make adjustments very quickly. You know, you've only got 3 rounds. It's tournament boxing. You can fight up to 5 times in a week. So you've got to be a fighter that can be a thinking fighter and make adjustments. So I do believe Fraser Clarke's got that ability. And I just think, like you say, he was hurt a few times in that last fight. I think that'll be his approach.
What are the adjustments that Fraser Clarke needs to make? Because for me, if I'm looking at it, I'm saying, however many jabs you were throwing in camp per round, make sure you're throwing double. Because the jab was working really well for Fraser Clarke in that fight. The right uppercut was working well for him as well. It was the sort of fight where I feel like if Fraser Clarke can implement what he did again, but have the engine and the cardio, which will come with the knowing now that he can go the distance.
Half of it's psychological, as you're saying.
There you go. So if he can have a higher output and go, right, I can do the 10, I can do the 12, whatever it is, whether it's a 10 or a 12 on the night. He knows now he can do the rounds. If he can squeeze a bit more juice out of that jab and out of the fundamental boxing skills in that intensity in those rounds, I think that he has the edge.
Yeah, no, I agree. I couldn't agree more. I think for Fraser Clarke, the tactics should be quite simple. It's because he showed a lot of things that were working, as you've just said, in the first fight. I think for him, the biggest thing he needs to do, as you've just said, is keep it simple with the jab. I think the jab needs to be a bigger output. You know, keeping his shape, because a lot of these times when he got caught is when he kind of was probably a little bit fatigued and he lost his shape. And like a couple of times, you see, I think it was it the first knockdown where he went towards the rope and he kind of crossed his legs and he got clipped. It was a bit of balance, but it was definitely a good shot as well. I think it's more about him staying disciplined for every second of the 3-minute round. I don't think it's anything about completely changing the game plan. It's about doing what he was doing with more discipline. And like you say, everything behind the jab. Good basic boxing. I don't think there's anything complex needed. Whereas for Fabio Wardley, you know, if I was to look at what he needs to do moving into it, I think he needs to be a little bit more aggressive. I think because, you know, what he done worked. It was just the basic boxing and jabbing. I don't think he's going to win a boxing match with Fraser Clarke. So I think he needs to be a little bit more crude, a bit more aggressive. There was a few times where, like, he did hurt Fraser Clarke and he didn't fully capitalise it, but that was probably down to Fraser Clarke's ability to weather the storm, use his jab, move off, you know what I mean? So it was a case of Fraser not allowing him. So he needs to be a little bit clever about the way he cuts Fraser off. So, but yeah, just to kind of wrap that one up, I'm backing Fraser Clarke, and I think I can't see a good performance from it. I can't see him necessarily stopping Wardley. I think it'll be a points victory.
Yeah.
What's your final prediction for it?
Again, like, some people will look at the first fight and say, well, hold on, haven't you learned that doesn't actually mean that they are levels apart? And I'm not suggesting that they're levels apart, but I can't help but look past the fact that Fraser Clarke's boxed Joseph Parker, he's boxed Joe Joyce quite a few times, he's boxed AJ, hasn't he, as an amateur?
He's boxed the highest level as an amateur.
Who was that really high level amateur that didn't make it in the pros? Kuzman,
Yeah.
Sergei Kuzman. He boxed him and he was a really good amateur that just didn't translate into the pro rank. So he's mixed at such a good level compared to Fabio Wardley that I can't help but feel like it makes me want to push towards him. But it is a coin toss, this one.
I'll be honest, I'm saying Fraser Clarke, but that's like how confident I am. Not very, to be honest. I'm probably picking him, 60-40.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's, that's probably, It could even be closer than that, but that's what I'm picking. I just feel as if he's got the ability to make adjustments. Whether he does it and Fabio draws him into a shootout, that's a different story. Because if it does turn into a shootout, I probably would back Wardley, but I'm hoping that Fraser's going to be more intelligent and box him.
With that nose, the scar tissue and the nose
There is
comes
that.
open of Fabio Wardley.
I think that was a big factor in the first fight, you know. I think because it was blocking his vision. I mean, the amount of blood that was coming from that. I mean, Wardley showed tremendous heart and focus, because I've seen fighters get cuts and it's absolutely thrown them, but he stuck with it. Like, absolute credit to him. But yeah, I am backing Fraser. But either way, I think the fans are going to be the winners in this one.
Depending on how the fight goes, say it goes a similar way to last time when we see ourselves waiting for a points decision to be read out at the end of it. If it's similar to the last one, I don't think either man loses stock.
No,
if they lose. Like,
there was
say
the same on the
Fabio
first
Wardley
fight.
was to lose, I still want to see him in with the same names I want to see him in with now.
Yeah.
And Fraser Clarke. So it's a good fight for these two, because if it goes that way, I don't think either man lose stock. If someone gets knocked out, then that's a different story, isn't it?
I think even if they get knocked out, I mean, like I say, it's this thing in boxing where you lose, you get knocked out, it's the game, end of the road, it's not. Like footballers don't lose a match and everyone writes them off.
Up, yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think they're both at a stage in the career where it's not the end of the world. You know, they're not at this stage of their career where people are saying, oh, where they're at. I mean, Fraser Clarke, despite his age and, you know, having a huge amateur pedigree, it's heavyweight boxing. People do get knocked out. Look at, you know, David Hay. Look at Lennox Lewis. Loads of guys get knocked out and go on to have great careers. I think it's more like you say, how they lose, but regardless, I think they can still go on and do great things. I just think it's a learning curve. I think it's a perfect matchup for both guys, to be honest, at this stage in the career. Moving on to Dmitry Bivol versus Artur Beterbiev, a fight that, you know, this is undisputed. This is, for the purist in the boxing, they know how good it is. I know they're not the biggest name in boxing, like we've said previously. They're not the biggest of characters, the type of guys that let the fist do the talking. But me, as an absolute boxing purist, this fight really excites me. You've got two completely different styles. Dmitry Bivol is the absolute epitome of pure boxing. You know, he's got everything. Great jab, good right hand, great mover. He can box on the front foot, back foot. He's absolutely amazing to watch. And then you've got, on the opposite side, an absolute power puncher. But don't get me wrong, he is an absolute, you know, world-class boxer as well.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people just see his knockouts and think he's just a puncher. But believe me, this guy has got an amazing boxing IQ, because, you know, it's all right having a, you know, punching power, but you've got to be able to set them punches up, them power punches.
Listen, he's got a win over Usyk in the amateurs. You don't do that without being a very good fundamental boxer.
That just explains it all, because there's not many light heavyweights can go up to cruiserweight and beat someone. And as we've seen, Usyk's went in there and beat Anthony Joshua, who's an absolute giant and an absolute force, like a genetic freak. So, and as well, you know, Beterbiev, I'm pretty sure he dropped Usyk with a body shot. So. I mean, the power translate all the way up to heavyweights. And if you've seen any interviews with, you know, coaches or sparring partners of Beterbiev, they all talk about his power like he's some sort of superhero. Like, his power's just second to none.
Even his wrists are strong. Do you see him dropping on them in the open workout?
He's like, you know, we talk about freaks of nature in boxing. He is one of those. And I've always, you know, you talk about Canelo's got power. You talk about Triple G in the past having, like, you know, his power, the way he used to hit people and they just crumble. He's up there. I mean, 100% record. 20 fights. Is it 20 fights, yeah? 20 fights, 20 knockouts. It's absolutely unbelievable. So we've got and the fact is, we've also the fact that these guys were both on the Russian amateur squad. So we've got, like, Beterbiev, the older guy, who was always the guy.
He was in the seniors. He was in the seniors. And Bivol was in the juniors.
So we've got, you know, Bivol want to, like, say, you know, I'm not that same guy that used to maybe potentially get the better of in sparring when you were the top guy. You know, I'm a grown man now, and he really wants to prove himself. So this fight just really excites me, in a fight that it could go anyway. Like, the other thing that I just want to mention is, the thing I am worried about is Beterbiev, because, you know, age catches up. He's 39 years of age. He's had multiple operations now on his knee. And all your power and your movement comes from your legs. And, you know, if you've got a bad knee injury, when you're rotating with your punches, you know, you don't want to be thinking about the bad knee when you're going into a world-class level fight. This is the undisputed. You've got the potentially probably two of the best pound-for-pound boxers in the world.
Yeah.
So I'm just really hoping that we'll see the best version of him, because I don't want this fight to be an anti-climax. I want to see the two best versions of both guys. And you know, he's 39, but I've seen no signs of aging, other than the injuries, which you could see his body's been breaking down slightly, but it's not really shown in his performances. If I was to say that any guy has been inconsistent, I would say that was Dmitry Bivol. I think he's the type of guy that he needs really big fights to be really motivated. We've seen him against, you know, Lyndon Arthur. We've seen him against, who else did we see him? Spider Richards. Who else?
Zaid, was it?
That was the last fight in Saudi. Yeah, we've seen them fights where he didn't look his best. Don't get us wrong, he got the job done, but there was definitely rounds where I think he took rounds off. There was times where he was struggling a little bit, but I think he's the type of guy that needs to be really motivated and excited.
Do you know what it is, mate? Like, I remember thinking this when Bivol went in with Canelo, and there's going to be so many people in the comments now saying, don't be making the mistake of comparing Canelo to Beterbiev, and I understand that, but when Bivol went in with Canelo, I was saying the same thing. I was going, didn't look great against Craig Richards though, did he? Six points decisions in his last 7 fights, or whatever it was at the time. I think now it's like 9 distance fights in his last 10. So he's not getting stoppages over these guys, right? But here's the main thing I'd say. I look at Beterbiev. The injury to the knee causes concern. Now, you spoke about the fact that, you know, your power is generated from there. Well, yeah. But not only that, your movement in terms of if you're going to be walking a man down, that's going to come from the knees and the legs too. And what I would say is, you could look at it and you could go, well, he goes in and walks everyone down. He walked Anthony Yard down. He walked Callum Smith down. You know, all these good fighters that he's gone in there and he's been able to do it. And to be honest, do it with ease. But show me a fighter that has the footwork of Dmitry Bivol that he's done that.
That's the difference. You're right.
He hasn't had the opportunity to, because he hasn't been in with anyone that have that footwork. But that is the main thing with Bivol. The thing I always look at, and I'm like, you know, and it can sound disrespectful in a way to think that these guys are there on one attribute and they're not. But when you look at that pound for pound list, everyone has multiple attributes that make them a great fighter. But you look at Inoue and you say, well, it's the punch power. You look at Tank Davis and you probably say the same. You know, you might back in the day you look at Floyd Mayweather and you say it's the IQ. Like, there's so many different things that get a fighter to where they are. And with Dmitry Bivol, I've personally always felt his defeat. The way he shifts in and out with those punches on the move as well, which is a weird thing because we speak about the fundamentals of boxing. When you were on TGB, without assuming, I'm probably going to guess they taught you not to punch on the move. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like when you're...
It's a Soviet style because that's what they do. It's as if they're jumping with the punches. And it's a very unique style. It's only really the Soviets that really do that style. The Kazakhs a little bit, they've got that style also. But yeah, if you want to say fundamentally, especially in the pro ranks, you know, it's different in amateur boxing because sometimes it's more about the point scoring, so you can kind of box on the move. But in the pro ranks, very rarely, unless you go back to the days of like the Muhammad Ali, you know, maybe Sugar Ray Leonard, they were guys who could box on the move and kind of up on the toes. But generally speaking, you don't get many fighters that can do it the way Dmitry Bivol does it. It's a very unique style. But I think that's where people say his punching power isn't necessarily the best, but it's not about that. It's a fact of he doesn't set his feet, he doesn't need to, he likes to keep it long. But what we did see against Canelo, when he had him backed up against the ropes, he did set his feet a little bit more. And, you know, evidently it kept Canelo at bay. Because
I think he hurt Canelo multiple times.
I've never ever seen Canelo, you know, on the ropes looking so unconfident, if you know what I'm saying.
I remember watching that fight, right? And I don't know who the commentary team was on DAZN on the night, but I remember thinking, you have got a pre-thought idea of how this fight is going to go, and I think it's affecting your commentary a little bit here because there was moments when they're talking about Canelo and the things that Canelo's doing, and I'm thinking, are we watching the same fight? I've just seen him get lit up with a 5-punch combo.
Because he's the
and I've
golden
never
boy.
seen that before. Do you know what I mean? So I almost think that despite him getting a shitload of credit for that Canelo performance, I almost think he doesn't get enough credit for it because there's people that go, oh, well, Canelo's not a natural light heavyweight. Yeah, he's not, but there'll be, you know...
He's got a world-class chin, put it that way. Like, I mean, we've seen him in there with Kovalev. Kovalev, I know, wasn't a prime Kovalev, but he was, in terms of punching power, he had the name the Crusher for a reason. He has power, and he never hurt Canelo, regardless of being the best performance. You know, your power's the last thing to go. He still had the power there, but I never seen him hurt Canelo like that. I've seen him in there with a lot of decent guys, and I've never really even, in recent years, I've never seen Canelo even slightly shook. I've never seen him take a backward step with a guy, but Bivol definitely hurt him, and I think his power is definitely underrated. And yes, there is the argument, he's not a natural light heavyweight, and naturally as you go up, your chin's not going to be as good against the naturally bigger guys. So that is in question. But with Dmitry Bivol, Artur Beterbiev, we do know he's got a decent chin. We have seen him hurt, but even when he's been hurt, he's got back up, and I think he's got great recovery.
I don't think we'll see Bivol hurt Beterbiev. The way I envision this fight going, and listen, I'm almost definitely going to be wrong on how this goes, because none of us can call it. But the way I play it out in my mind, I don't see power or the ability to hurt his opponent being something that is a sort of monumental factor in this fight for Bivol. I think Bivol can win the fight without hurting Artur Beterbiev. I don't believe that Beterbiev wins the fight without hurting Bivol.
Oh, 100%. Well, his record, Beterbiev's record speaks for itself. He doesn't lose. He doesn't win on points. He knocks every guy out.
He doesn't lose on points though either.
He certainly doesn't lose on points either. So I see, for Beterbiev, it's about hurting. He needs to be able to hurt Dmitry Bivol, because if he can't hurt him and land the shot, if he can't, cut him off and do some damage, Dmitry Bivol's engine's great. In terms of, if I was to pick the purest of boxers, who's better between the two, I'm going to pick Dmitry Bivol. If I'm talking about who's got the best feet, I'm going to pick Dmitry Bivol. I think for Beterbiev, it's about hurting him. He needs to be able to hurt him so he can get him pinned on the ropes and slow him down. That's his only way, but evidently he's always been able to do that. No guys went without being nailed on the canvas. But with Dmitry Bivol, he needs to be able to hurt Beterbiev in some shit. Like, I can't see him being able to outbox him for 12 rounds. He needs to, I'm not saying hurt him in terms of put him down or anything, but he needs to be able to have enough force on his shot and to gain his respect, if you know where I'm coming from. Otherwise, I think that's where the problem is. If he can't gain his respect, because like I said, I just can't see him outboxing him for a full 12 rounds. There's going to be moments where he's going to be pinned to the ropes. And if he can't return fire with enough force to keep him off, because I think with Beterbiev, he's got such confidence in his power and chin. He's happy to stand and trade. That's his game. Because I think as well, people underestimate his boxing ability. He doesn't slip, bob, and roll all over the place. He's got very subtle movements with the way he slips and just stabs the shots. And he doesn't wind his shots up. He's got a
great jab, Beterbiev. He's got a real good jab, and that's something that goes under the radar. But the problem is, it's not a better jab, in my opinion, than Bivol's. And here's the thing: it looks like I'm leaning heavily towards Bivol, mate. Neither man winning would surprise me in this situation. But I think that one of the reasons that Beterbiev doesn't get the credit for his boxing ability is because his style doesn't have enough holes in it to force him into showing that boxing ability. So you're not going to see back foot counter-punching left hooks and things from Beterbiev because he's not backed up. Do you know what I mean? See, you don't see some of the classy little boxing moves that you might see from a Bivol. You don't see it from Beterbiev because he's never in a position where he has to show those things.
I think where he really shines is his judgment of distance. Like maybe that's down to his confidence in his chin. He gets so close, and because he's got that power, most of his guys are worried about that power, so they generally go on the back foot. We did see Yard stand toe-to-toe with them. We're also seeing Callum Johnson. But 9 times out of 10, he comes on top because of his power. But I think people do underestimate his IQ and his boxing ability because he's so subtle in what he does. And his power, it's basic fundamentals. But listen, we could talk all day about this fight because there's so many factors and it's such a great fight. But I'm just going to get your final prediction before we wrap up.
It's really hard.
What's your gut telling you straight off?
My gut's telling me Bivol 1 points.
Okay, well, my gut straight off without thinking too much, because if we chat too long, I'll go back and forth. But I'm going to go with Artur. As long as Artur Beterbiev turns up and there's no issue with that knee, I see a stoppage. His record speaks for himself, and I just think I don't know a man on the planet that can take his power. That's the problem. And like I say, I do rate his IQ, so I'm going with Artur Beterbiev.
We'll have a tenner on it.
Let's
have a tenner on it.
Okay, mate. Okay, well, the pain game will be live, and there's an option. He chose us for commentary, so make sure to tune in.
How mad is that, by the way?
Come on, you need to choose us.
You can buy the pay-per-view for this fight, and you can choose to listen to our commentary over the DAZN commentary or whoever's putting it on. So.
And listen, we say it the way it is, whereas, you know, there's no agenda, you know, it's unfiltered, so what you see is what you get, so you need to tune in. Okay, well, appreciate you all watching, and we'll see you in the next one.